racism, AOL, and Christianity. Weirdly enough, these three already have a lot in common. And one of the things that I want to talk about today that encompasses all three is the masterpiece that is Marvel, a comic series written by the mastermind himself, former CEO of Marvel, Bill Jemas. But this beautiful comic book doesn't just have those three things. It also has a ton of meta humor, talking dinosaurs, and Wolverine evolving from an otter. And I don't mean the animal Wolverine, I mean the literal X-Men Wolverine. But I don't want to spoil everything right away. First, let's talk about how we got to this point. In the ancient year of 2002, veteran comic book writer Peter David was writing a Captain Marvel series that he loved, but was unfortunately underperforming. It was selling around 20K copies an issue, which was something that Bill Jemas considered at the time DC numbers. And Bill actually considered canceling the series because of these low numbers, but then a fan suggested that he raises the price instead. And you know how much rich people love raising prices. So he raised the price from $2.50 to $2.75. All right. No big deal, except it was a huge deal. And it was the first domino to fall in a series of events that led to us getting the classic that is Marvel. Peter David was the first to speak out, saying that this was going to drop readership even more. He suggested that Marvel changes their promotion strategy, and instead of promoting comics that were already very popular, like the current Avengers series, that they actually focused on promoting the less popular series, like his Captain Marvel one. Peter David even said that he would write for less money, just so they didn't increase the price of each issue. Now in comes Joe Quesada, the editor-in-chief at Marvel, and he starts criticizing Peter David, saying that his writing was the reason for the underperformance of the Captain Marvel series. And this is where Bill steps in again. See, Bill has a bit of an ego. So when he became CEO at Marvel, he decided he was going to give some writers some constructive criticism. He tried doing this to Peter David once, and Peter David ignored him. So he saw this argument between Joe Quesada and Peter David as an opportunity to prove that he knew what he was talking about when it came to writing comic books, even though he had never written one before. So Marvel's You Decide contest was created. Bill Jemas, Peter David, and Joe Quesada were all going to write their own comic book series, 6 issues each. Whoever sold the most issues would win, and their ego would probably skyrocket through the roof. And technically, Joe Quesada didn't have to write his series. He was just the editor for it, but that was a part of the rules, so there was no issue there. The losers would have their own punishments. Joe Quesada would get a pie to the face, Bill Jemas would fall into a dunk tank, and Peter David's Captain Marvel series would be canceled for good. These punishments were planned to happen at the next Wizard World event, which I had no clue what that was, but it's basically another Comic-Con. But that doesn't even matter because none of these punishments actually went through in the end. So for the contest, Peter David relaunched his Captain Marvel series, starting back at issue number 1. Joe Quesada brought on Ron Zimmerman to write Ultimate Adventures for him, and Bill Jemas wrote Marvel. And surprise, surprise, the actual comic book writer won. While each comic sold decently the first issue, with Captain Marvel and Marvel each selling 50K copies and Ultimate Adventures selling 30K, Marvel and Ultimate Adventures had a huge drop-off in the following issues, while Captain Marvel stayed selling strong. Captain Marvel even made it to an 8th issue where it still sold 29K copies. But this isn't about Captain Marvel or Ultimate Adventures or that stupid contest, because a writer going up against the CEO and the editor-in-chief, the writer was always going to win. This is about Marvel, the comic book series produced when a CEO thought that he could do his employee's job. I read Marvel, and I can say with 100% confidence that it is definitely a comic book series of all time. But you won't have to take my word for it, because I'm going to go through it for you right now. So first of all, the cover art for issue 1 is pretty fire. It's a nod to Smallville, which I coming to the realization as I say this that maybe that's why it's called Marvel. Wow. I've read this twice now and I didn't put that together. The cover looks cool, but prepare for that to be the best part of the series. So the series starts in 5002 AD on the world AOL, which we learn is just Earth, but after it's sold out to AOL. Just to explain that, Warner Brothers was merged with AOL at the time, so Bill Jemas thought it would be funny to make a bunch of AOL jokes about DC. So there are asteroids hitting the Earth everywhere, and it seems like the planet is going to be destroyed with no survivors. Sound familiar? We cut to Ted Turner, who for some reason is still alive 3,000 years later. He walks outside and chops a falling asteroid in half. I didn't stutter. He also apparently hollers in a fashion that is really insensitive to Native Americans, and some dude calls him out for it, and as a result gets hit with an asteroid. So, great start. So Ted goes back inside and decides that the only way to save the world is by sending his son, who is named Cal AOL, by the way, back in time with his dog, who is named AOL Stro. I don't know about you, but I'm already over the AOL jokes. But they're not going anywhere. So Ted wants to send his son back in time because he believes that maybe Cal AOL, who I am now only going to call Cal, because Cal AOL is just terrible and I don't want to say that every single time. He believes that maybe he can warn the people of the past of the future that is to come, which I guess is Earth selling out to AOL and then asteroids destroying the planet. Does this sound familiar to anyone? You know, world dying, sun being sent away because it's going to be destroyed. Ring any bells? Now Cal seems to be thinking along the same lines as us, because as soon as he gets to the past, he believes that he'd have some sort of powers due to him being on a different world. So he tries flying by hopping around like a dumbass until he ends up in the middle of the street with his dog. And right at the same time, a taxi is rolling down the lane that Cal is in. Something awakens in Cal, a newfound ability to stop time as he saves himself and his dog from being hit by the taxi cab. Oh, wait, never mind. The taxi driver just stopped before hitting him, and Cal took his sweet ass time to get out of the way. And the stupid part is that Cal still believes, for some reason, that he has powers that he used to save himself. So the taxi driver gets out of her car to check on Cal and make sure he's not high off of some grade A cocaine like he's Snowflame. And Cal asks for a ride to the bank. And at the bank, the ATM steals Cal's debit card because it's from the future, like it would be able to detect that anyways. So he goes inside to talk to a manager. Inside the bank, Cal meets the manager, who is Alan Greenspan. I'm too young to know who that is, so I don't really get the reference. But he tells Cal that Cal actually has $100 million in his bank account, and then he proceeds to pull out a suspiciously small bag of $100 million. But he says he can't have it for 3,000 years. Now with $100 million just laying around on the counter, some criminal appears out of nowhere and snatches that shit. Reasonable. And Cal is still pissed about the money that he can't have, so he just lets the robber run by. Does that sound familiar? Letting a robber run by when you could have easily stopped them? I don't know if I've ever heard that one. Cal is on the same brainwaves as me, because as him and the taxi driver walk back outside, there's a huge crowd surrounding where he left his dog. And he says, "No way, same robber who I didn't stop run out here and kill my lazy, drooly old dog?" Nope. Apparently he just slipped on the dog's drool puddle and got knocked out. Also, what did your dog do to deserve that sneak diss? It wasn't even a sneak diss. It was just, you just straight up dissed him. So due to his dog being a true hero, Cal gets $100 million as a reward for stopping the guy. Now, realistically, that would go back to the bank, but logic flew out the window as soon as Ted Turner chopped an asteroid in half. So the taxi driver, who we learn is named Mickey, decides to keep hanging with this dude who was clearly high off of acid. And they go to buy tickets for a Broadway play off of a scalper. Such riveting adventures. But oh no, he's being robbed by the same dude as earlier, which, why isn't he in jail? Bro stole $100 million from a bank. That's at least 10 life sentences and a staged suicide via a bullet to the back of the head. Anyways, Somehow, Cal just learns martial arts and kicks the dude's ass so they can buy the tickets. But we literally only get one page of them inside the theater before they get kicked out because Cal decided to bring his stupid ass dog inside. So literally everything that has happened so far has been meaningless. So they're back outside and they're confronted by the same damn robber. I wish I had this guy's confidence because he's 0-2 right now and he's still fighting. This time he tries to use a gun to steal Cal's dog, but AOL takes off into a nearby alley, which, let me just say, the background has looked the exact same every single time they stood on a sidewalk. There's just no creativity to this. Anyways, the robber takes off into the alley after the dog, and then we hear a gunshot. Gunshot in an alleyway after leaving a play? Sound familiar? Once again, Cal is on the same type of timing and says, and I quote, "Oh no, no way. Did the robber just kill my dog, who was all I have left, and a metaphor for my mother and father?" No, this time AOL let out a fart that was so putrid that the robber fainted. And for some reason, there's a crowd of people and a police officer in the alleyway beforehand. Who knows what they were doing? But the cop gives him another $100 million for stopping this guy that he refuses to arrest. And that's where the first issue ends. Yeah, that was rough. Not only did he make fun of the three most well-known superhero origins, but one of those origins was from your company. Like, why would you do that? It's like he doesn't actually like his own superheroes. But wait, it's just getting good. Just so we're on the same page, the second comic book cover isn't cool. It's not badass. It's just some pink chick that doesn't even exist in the story. She's on every single cover after issue 1, half naked. Trust me, I did not appreciate that, considering the fact that I read this for the first time on an airplane. So we start off issue 2 with Cal and Mickey chilling in a park. And Cal is still really delusional. He still thinks he has superpowers. Relatable, am I right? They have a talk about how in the future you read Stan Lee in school instead of Shakespeare, which, real shit, that would have gotten me to pay attention in class. But then a homeless version of Peter David, that Peter David, walks up to them and asks for some spare change. Apparently in this universe, Peter David lost the You Decide contest so bad that he got fired and never hired by another company again. What a kind way to depict one of your employees. I don't know how I'd feel if my boss depicted me in that type of way. I'd crash out. But as Cal starts to give him money because Cal's just such a nice guy, Rush Limbaugh, of all people, speaks out to tell him to stop. Rush Limbaugh is sunbathing no more than 20 feet away and continues to tell Cal to not give Peter David any money because apparently he's just lazy. Limbaugh just goes on a rant about how homeless people don't deserve help because they don't work hard and they're lazy. Now you'd think this is an example of Bill Jemas being out of touch with regular people and the people who would read this comic, but Limbaugh is actually painted as a joke in this comic. He's arrogant and stupid and has very loud farts. I really don't know what Bill's deal with farts is. It must be some type of disguised fetish because he continuously has both Rush Limbaugh and the dog fart. So Cal gives Peter David the money, and with this, Cal decides he wants to become a hero that helps the poor. So he starts walking into town and starts giving random people money. Once again, it's the same damn background as before. But Cal only gets about a minute into handing out money before Iron Man, Black Panther, and Dollar Store Batman show up and start beating the ever-living shit out of the people he was giving money to. It's another commentary on rich people not having any empathy, which is a little odd coming from the CEO, but you know, whatever. It's a lot more problematic with how he went about showing this. So not Batman starts talking about how it doesn't matter how much money you're giving the people, it's the principle to beat them up while ripping someone's arm off. And then Iron Man Why don't I just read it for you? I closed down that factory and outsourced everything to Mexico, but 1,000 people lost their jobs, and all the neighborhood businesses went bust. I know, I destroyed the local economy, but you can pay Mexicans $1 an hour and they still work like careful. So we just get the worst characterization of Iron Man ever. Like he's rivaling comic book John Walker, comic book Homelander, and Ultimate's Captain America with lines like that. But wait, because then Rush Limbaugh poofs back into existence with a golden podcast microphone and incapacitates the three heroes as they run towards him, calling him their hero. Maybe I was wrong. The layers to the shit is top tier. Rich guy at the top turning on his followers? That shit's heat. So the police show up and arrest both the heroes and the people getting their skulls bashed in. And they just decide to hang out with Cal because they learn he has $200 million. So Cal gets the brilliant idea to prevent crime before it happens by stopping the Kingpin, because he's still trying to make this superhero shit happen for some reason. So the female cop named Lucy dresses up like a hooker and Cal dresses up like a tourist. And their plan is to buy drugs from a drug dealer and then arrest him and interrogate him so that he gives up knowledge about the Kingpin. How delightfully entertaining and engaging. The worst part is that we don't even get to actually see the drug deal go down. We just cut to the part where he's already being arrested and processed at the police station. Not that it would have been entertaining, but when the characters make in detail a plan, just for the writers to skip over it, it feels really lazy and cheap. And then Bill Jemas shows us one of his many fetishes as the stripper cop takes the drug dealer into a holding cell, makes him get on his knees, and then has him lick the smudge off of her fingers while she calls him a bad boy. Make things worse, Matt Murdock shows up and gets him acquitted of all charges. So the setup for their plan was useless. Them being at the police station was useless. Him licking the smudge off of her fingers was useless. This comic is useless. But don't worry, because Matt Murdock gives Cal, Lucy, and Mickey the Kingpin's real name, which apparently is what they needed to go and catch him. But before we get to Kingpin, Lucy, who is still dressed like a stripper, pulls her gun on Spider-Man as he is walking a lady across the street, because apparently the fact that he's always around crime scenes makes him a criminal. Spider-Man's not the only guy to pop up, because the Punisher also shows up and starts shooting at our gang for no reason. So now the crew that is confronting Kingpin is Cal, Mickey, Lucy, Spider-Man, and the Punisher. Now, before we get to the Kingpin, I do want to call out a part of this comic that I thought was at least a little bit funny. So when they get to the building that Kingpin is in, Spider-Man decides to climb the wall to get to the floor that Kingpin is on. Punisher decides to blast his way in, and Cal decides that he's going to crawl through the vents, while Lucy and Mickey just, use the elevator like normal people. But Lucy and Mickey are the first ones to make it to the floor that the Kingpin is on by just taking the elevator. It's not clever or anything, but I chuckled. So they confront Kingpin, and of course, he starts talking about black people being criminals for some reason, just completely unprovoked. But we still haven't actually seen the Kingpin yet. He's hiding behind one of those stereotypical CEO villain chairs. So I'm thinking, who the fuck is actually in that chair? Shazam! Spike Lee, of all people, is the Kingpin. This revelation seemed to break Cal because he just walks away and gives up. So once again, all this buildup for no conclusion. Cal says that it feels like his life is one long contrived Marvel comic book. No, Cal, it's much worse than that. Then he starts yapping about how the real way to figure out what's right and what's wrong is to understand the meaning of life first. All right. Random segue into philosophy from someone who has been painted as a dumbass the entire series. In Right on Command, his parents send the time machine that they sent Cal back to present times in, back in time. Ignore logic. Just deal with the fact that it doesn't make sense. And that's how the second issue ends. More buildup and more bullshit just to spit in our faces at the climax. It's not clever. It's not funny. It's just boring, especially when the main character isn't even that exciting in the first place. But wait, because it gets worse. I'm going to speed through issues 3 through 6 because not only is this video long, but if I went through them as detailed as the first two, I'd put you to sleep because of how boring they are. So let's start. Now to start off, everything about this series changes. The first two issues were like if you made a superhero comic version of the scary movies, but now the comic book series is trying to be philosophical, for a lack of a better word. For this issue and only this issue for some reason, the art style completely changes as well. And it's not because a new penciler or colorist was used, it's all the same people. So it literally was just a creative change that Bill Jemas made. So now instead of the classic speech bubbles for text, we get words that cover up the art, which I'll give credit where it's due. There was more effort put into this art than the previous issues. It's just weird how abrupt and different the change is. So Cal is depressed now because crime didn't stop no matter what he tried to do. So he decides the best thing to do is to go back in time and see God to ask him about the creation of life. Mickey and Lucy also go with him and they have contrasting views about whether God is real or not, but it doesn't matter because they hop into a time machine and end up finding God, or at least some dude that wants to act like he's God without actually being given the title. He'd rather be called Jack. So Jack takes them to a beach where they decide to go skinny dipping. But of course, when Jack, who does portray himself as a black man, strips down, the two girls channel their inner Kim Kardashian and call him a African fertility god. Once again, I was on a plane cramped between two other folks while reading this. Drop a like and subscribe. So this comic becomes a biology lesson, which was my least favorite subject in school, as they learn about photosynthesis under the water. Like, you gotta understand how cooked I really was reading this. Like, biology was the one class in school that I actually fell asleep in multiple times. So Jack shows them photosynthesis, and our main characters, Cal the dumbass, Mickey the taxi driver, and Lucy the stripper cop, become fucking scientists talking about this shit. Turns out both the taxi driver and the stripper cop both went to high prestige universities. How convenient. But after that, they thankfully put their clothes back on and hop back in the time machine and head 30 million years forward just to skinny dip again and have another biology lesson. All that skinny dipping really inspired me to take off my hot ass hoodie so I could actually, feel the cold air. So after skinny dipping, Cal and Mickey have an argument about how the small little events that allow for evolution couldn't be random, and that God is actually making small adjustments that allow for these events to happen. And look, you're not gonna get an opinion out of me on that. I don't care. I'm just a guy who likes superheroes. And I'm sure everyone else who bought this comic just likes superheroes and didn't want to read about some dumbass philosophical exploration into the creation of life. But enough of that. We got to get to the dinosaurs. Issue 4 takes the cast even farther down the history of the world to the Jurassic era, or I guess the Mesozoic era. Technicalities like this is why I hated biology. So to get to the age of dinosaurs, they bring a bucket of water filled with microorganisms along with them into the time machine, because apparently as they move ahead in time, these microorganisms will evolve into what we know as a dinosaur, because that logically makes sense. Why, if them as humans don't evolve as they move through time, would the organisms within the water evolve as they move through time? They're both in the time machine, which seems to not be affected by any temporal distortion outside of it. Whatever, it doesn't matter. We've got a dinosaur and his name is Snorts, and he can talk because According to Bill Jemas, duckbills have very elaborate voice boxes, and because of that, they can talk, even though voice boxes are not the only thing that allows humans to talk. It's also the flexibility of our facial structure, something that animals, or most of them at least, don't have. I don't know why I'm even trying to use logic here. It hasn't made sense since the first issue. Oh yeah, I didn't mention this, but we also go back to regular comic book art for issue 4. Like, I don't know why we're swapping between art styles. Just stick with one and be consistent. So Snorts runs off and Jack chases after him for some reason. And while he's gone, the other three get chased around by large duckbills until Snorts conveniently comes back to save them. And yeah, the other duckbills talk as well. I don't know if this is Bill Jemas's way of saying that he believed that duck-billed dinosaurs could actually talk, but considering how philosophical and smart he tries to be in these comics, I wouldn't put it past it that this may be a secret belief of his. So there's a big dino fight, but it only lasted 1 page and it's meaningless, just like everything else. So I wanted to move on to the point where we see otters, because after spouting some more boring bullshit about how God cannot directly affect the world, they hop back into the time machine and move ahead in time. They move past the meteor that hit Earth and tons of life evolution. And during this, Mickey and Lucy get into another argument behind the science of evolution. And Mickey continuously gets painted as a dumbass just for believing that evolution was random, which, you know, whatever. Once again, I don't care. It's just you paint another thought process as being stupid just because you believe something else. That's not the that's not the greatest thing to do. Honestly, I just think the biggest problem is that we're pushing an agenda in a comic series that was not advertised as that. Like, you could have advertised the comic book series as that and this would have been fine, but that's not what it was advertised as. You have a pink half-naked lady on the cover. Then we get this beautiful image and a tease at the most blasphemous part of this series. Remember that otter that I was talking about earlier? So they brought that into the time machine in issue 5 to defy logic and evolve into a human being, the first human being, who just so happens to be Wolverine. That's Wolverine, everybody. If you needed to be reminded that this is a comic published by Marvel, that's Wolverine. And he does nothing that Wolverine is known to do besides say the word bub. He basically just has the name for no reason. Then we get this beautiful drawing. I don't know why there's so many weird frames in these comics. There's just a lot of really odd looking images. So this issue talks about how Jemas believes that humans and Neanderthals actually made it. And that's how Neanderthals were wiped out, because the human genes were dominant to the recessive Neanderthal genes. Jack also gets really mad, calls scientists dumbasses, and then they fast forward a bit in time. This part is a blur to me. I'm sorry. We see Wolverine, there's a war. Wolverine does the Thor pose, and then some girls talk about their virginity or something. It's all just so unnecessary, played out, and boring, like the finale to season 1 of Titans. Basically, there are 2 human tribes and they have what they call war, but it's really just them fighting each other and then going back to their tribes afterward. It's more a fight for pride than actual killing. And Jack tries to make this a point to show the last time that humans had peace. And then the issue ends with a metaphor for Jesus Christ being the path to peace, which doesn't correlate at all with what's been happening in the story. I find it really ironic that there's such a turn towards Christianity in this series, especially considering the thirst traps that are the covers for these comics. Like, look at the cover art for issue 6. Issue 6 is literally just Cal talking to some person that we can't see, recapping the events of issues 1 through 5. It seems like he wrote a book on his experiences and is trying to get it published. Surprise, surprise, the guy says it won't sell and he's not going to publish it. For some reason, Cal is now an intellectual and he believes that his book will save the world. Like, How arrogant and conceited do you have to be to put something like that in your comic book? Marvel does have a seventh issue, but it's literally just the guidelines for a new line of comics that are going to be published under what would be called Epic Comics. Basically, if you wanted to write a story, whether it be of an existing Marvel character or one of your own creation set in the Marvel universe, you could submit it to Epic Comics. And if they liked your submission, you could fully put together a comic and they would publish it for you. The only thing is, they'd make all the money from the sales and they'd maintain all rights, and you'd only get paid set amounts based off of your merits. Yeah, this only lasted about a year or two, just like Bill's career at Marvel. But Epic Comics did bring us some masterpieces, like Captain Confederacy. Fun fact, in high school, I actually had an idea for a similar character. He was named the Red Soldier, but I had to cancel my idea once I learned about the other guy. Look, all jokes aside, Marvel is what you get when someone thinks they're so smart and intelligent that they can enter a new industry that they've never been in before and make gold. Because this comic tries so hard to act like it's ahead of its time. Like Peter Griffin said, it insists upon itself.
It insists upon itself, Lois.
If you want to make a comic that supports your ideals or pushes a message like this, sure, go ahead. There shouldn't be a problem with that as long as the message isn't harmful to anyone. But when you constantly make fun of the genre that you are writing for and then mislead the audience, you're gonna end up with dog shit. That's what this is. But I'm done dogging Marvel. Bill Jemas is an integral part of Marvel's story. Who knows if Marvel would have been able to get out of bankruptcy without him. He's also one of the people responsible for creating the Ultimates universe, which is the universe that about 10 years later gave us Miles Morales. So without Bill Jemas, we may not ever get Miles Morales, the main character in some of the most popular animated movies out right now. Bill Jemas joined many different entertainment ventures after leaving Marvel, mainly surrounding comic books. But he also released a translation for the original text of the Hebrew Bible. That one's random, but in character. But in current times, he's one of the heads at a new company called AWA Comics, which produced its first series in 2019 about a global pandemic. But besides the shaky start, this company is still producing comics today. And although some do look interesting and not at all AI generated, it's cool to see that he is at least pretty solid when it comes to managing comic book companies. He just needs to stay away from writing them. Please. All right, just to confirm for those who actually cared, Bill Jemas is actually not with AWA Comics anymore. He actually quit in 2022 to set up Be Good Studios, which seems to be some sort of entertainment studio for things like comic books, webtoons, other things like that. But on his LinkedIn, it seems that he is also the CEO of Chirp Up, which is a company that seems to be helping with the losses in bird populations, which I can get behind because I really like animals. So even if he's still not in the comic book industry, I can still respect that he's doing something good for the world. So yeah, that's all I've got for you today. Let me know what you think about the beautiful comic series that is Marvel. I think it's a really important part of comic book history simply because it shows what happens when you just don't care about the art at all and still try to act like you know what you're doing. Like, I just think it's insane that he really thought that that was something special and that people would like that. And maybe he didn't think people would like it, but he definitely thought that it was, I don't know, top tier. He definitely thought it deserved an award. But yeah, like the video if you like what you saw here. Sub for more content like this. I'm looking to get more into the comic book world, maybe go into some more deep dives like this. I already have a video planned going over Absolute Batman because that is one of my favorite new series out right now. But there's just so much out there to talk about. So stay tuned. There will always be videos on the way. Let me know if there's anything you want me to cover in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching.